As we are in that recreation mode, in starting new relationships, starting new careers, etc., we don't really realize how often we have to make decisions based on trust. Do we trust this person?
Did you push record?
Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. I'm so happy to welcome back the host of the Mind Story Speaker Podcast and the co-founder of the Mind Story Coaching Academy, Carla Rieger. Carla, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm happy to have you back. You've been here several times before. We'll link to a lot of our previous segments. You caught my attention again with some of your recent podcasts, which I thought really pertain to what it is that we're going through on Second Act. And one of those is, as we are in that recreation mode, in starting new relationships, starting new careers, etc., we don't really realize how often we have to make decisions based on trust. Do we trust this person? Is it be it a new relationship, starting to date again, taking advice, as you said in your podcast, from financial, whoever, newscasters, whatever. The whole idea of needing to trust people in order to navigate through this life is very important, but we're not trained for it quite well. Let's talk about that. In your podcast, you talk about 9 signs that somebody is trustworthy or not, and I'd like to go through that. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think most of us have an internal barometer as to whether someone's trustworthy or not, but sometimes it's not a good barometer. Right. And I've been victim of myself, like the person compliments you a lot, or they have this really great resume, and yet there's signs that you're going to get burned in some way and you didn't see it. And we've all been burned. We've all had people, lose our trust, and we ourselves have been untrustworthy at times, right?
Yeah.
So if anyone ever tells you, no, I've never done anything to break someone's trust ever.
Yeah.
Don't trust them.
Don't trust
They're
them.
probably, because everyone's done it, right? Often more like when you're younger and you don't realize the consequences. But so it's always good to look at, where did I lose trust with people? Where did, people lose trust with me, and to learn from it.
Right. Well, you say the number one, or not necessarily the number one, but the first sign that you mentioned was that people don't continually lie to themselves. That's a big red flag. What do you mean by that?
Well, this is a really interesting one. You know how you meet sometimes people and they don't seem to be in touch with what's really going on with them? Like it could be an addiction or like some big personality flaw, like they're really bad with money, but they act like they're good with it, or they act like they don't have an addiction. So that's sort of a red flag right there. If they can't be honest with themselves, they can't be honest with others.
Right.
Right. And a lot of people lie to themselves. And I mean, we all do at some level. We all have our blind spots. But if it's like a really big continual thing, it all starts here.
Yeah.
You got to be honest with yourself.
Exactly. And that's, to your second point, is that people or trustworthy people tend to trust others. And that is so true. And this is something you can, I think, ascertain when you first meet someone is, do they have trust issues with others? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, there's that old adage, cheaters often accuse their partner of cheating on them. And I didn't realize until that happened to me. I was dating this guy and he was just immediately assumed I was cheating on him. I was like, oh, no, I'm not. Even we decided to be exclusive. Well, it turns out he was totally cheating on me.
Yeah.
Right. Or, thieves are often paranoid that someone's going to steal their stuff. Right. But people who don't do that don't, think that way. Now, the problem is, of course, the more trusting you are, the more easily you get duped. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. It's good to be trusting, but it's good to have your criteria. So
Well, and I think we should always have some antennas up, obviously, otherwise that we'd be stupid. But it's even saying it, or well, I don't trust you, or but by having somebody say that, or if you're the one saying it, what message are you really saying to somebody else? You're to me, it's a red flag that you're not trustworthy. So I thought that was a good point. I love this one. They are congruent, and by that I believe you mean they say or they do what they say they are going to do. That is so big for me.
Yeah, and it can be little things like I'll meet you for lunch at noon, and they show up at 12:45. It's like, oh, what happened? Like, why didn't you renegotiate the time or text me or something? Like some people, and some people I know they have a different idea around time, but if it's like a continual, like, oh yes, I'll do that for you, and then they don't send you that thing, it's like, okay, what's going on? Right?
Yeah, it's not only rude, it's very indicative that, yeah, you couldn't do not trustworthy. I agree. Well, and then just caring about the truth, I think you said, display discomfort when asked to lie. I don't know that we're always like asked to outright lie, but even something like, oh, just tell that, come, let's do this, and tell so and so we've got blah, 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 you have something else going. That really hit home with me when you said that, because that makes me really uncomfortable. So I guess that's a good thing about me.
Yeah. They like the truth. They like to be able to tell the truth. And, you can sort of see that with people. I'm sure you have two people in your life where one person's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine to lie. And other people, clearly, it's unless there's a really good benevolent reason for it, they'd really prefer not to.
Yeah. And I think little white lies play into that. Sometimes, it is about not hurting somebody, but the more comfortable I think somebody is with that, the more I would question how trustworthy they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The show compassion, that they honestly care about others. What a great point.
Yeah. I'm sure you've met people where they'll sort of laugh at somebody's misfortune, or they hear about something bad going on with someone else and they're like, whatever, I mean, not to be totally worried about everyone and everything. So there's boundaries, but they have a heart, right? They care. So therefore, they understand that if they act in an untrustworthy way, they're going to feel bad about it, right? They're not sort of a bit sociopathic where they'll break your trust and they don't really care, right? And some people can seem like a great personality, but they actually just have this ethic. They don't have a good moral compass. They're like, yeah, so what if I break someone's trust? That's their issue, not mine.
Yeah. And a lot of that, I think, and this is the purpose of the segment, as was your podcast, and we'll link to it, of course, so you can listen in more detail, but is awareness for it, because maybe you don't even know that to look for this. And I'm not suggesting look for the bad, because if whatever you look for, you tend to find, but do be aware that this could be indicative of a trust issue. And here's another one, to me that's so obvious, but true confidence comes from humility, demonstrating humility, and not this boasting, overconfident persona.
Yeah. And there's lots of psychological studies to show that arrogance and boasting is actually a sign that someone has low self-esteem, and they have to, try to get you to think of them as this other person than who they really feel they are. Because if you really feel okay about yourself, you don't need to go around and tell everybody, hey, you should trust me. Hey, I'm great, because it should be obvious by your actions, over time.
Yeah. And that goes right into the seek power with versus power over. Great point.
Yeah. And, there's some great books written on that topic. I've taught collaborative leadership for years, and a lot of the kind of leadership that we've seen in organizations and companies has been power over, right? There's the hierarchy, and I tell you what to do, and you couch out to my power, right? And the power with is I empower you. And that is a collaborative form of leadership. So I do well as a leader by helping you do well. And it's a completely different philosophy.
Yeah.
And some people are just naturally that way. They want you to do well. They want to lift you up. They want to make, not at their own expense. That's important. You don't want someone who's putting themselves below you, but they see themselves as good as, and not less or not higher than others, is kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, and that speaks directly to interpersonal relationships or romantic relationships as well. This one too, they tend to be calm and centered and have inner peace. How do you recognize that in someone?
Well, I was thinking about, when you're on a date for the first time, and obviously everyone's a little nervous.
Yeah.
But so, some sort of situations we're a little more nervous. But, if you've been with someone several times and you're getting to know each other, but there's always this sort of agitation going on, like this furtive sort of, I don't really want you to see who I really am kind of energy, that would be a sign the person's not so trustworthy. But if they're sort of comfortable with themselves and they're relaxed inside because they're allowing you to see who you really are, who that person really is, then I think that's a sign they're trustworthy. Again, it's like that congruence and that self-esteem, really. It's a sign of self-esteem. And you can sort of pick up on that agitation sometimes, like they seem calm, but you're a little agitated. You're picking up on their body language or sort of that energetic, sort of subconscious feeling of kind of being off when you're around them.
Yeah. So if your gut speaks to you, listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, none of this is, black and white, but it's really about understanding some of the basics of what it is to be trustworthy or not, And that leaves us to the final one. They are embodied, as you write here. They are more grounded and centered, and don't worry about the future. How is that different from number 8?
Yeah, well, I think somebody can be calm and centered, but still a bit lost in their head. So embodied is they're sort of grounded into their body. They're not like, how some people are talking heads and they're spinning, they're thinking about the future, worried about the past. They're not really here with you in the moment. And you can tell by the way they walk and the way they move, they're more connected, which I would say is more of a heart-mind connection, which would again connect them to their compassion and all that kind of stuff. They're more holistic of a person as opposed to disconnected, right? When you're disconnected from your body, you tend to be lost in a world of thought. And so you might be so goal-oriented that you wouldn't think, how are my actions going to affect a person? So that's why I say look for how they walk and move, and do they seem comfortable in their own skin?
Yeah, and how do they make you feel? How does that make you feel? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we're starting to come to the end. What would you like to leave us with on this? Because it's not both ways. It goes both ways.
Yeah,
I don't want what
both ways.
Yeah, what I don't want is to hear we're all encourage someone to all of a sudden be looking for all this stuff, because we also have to look within. Correct?
Yeah, we're all a work in progress. And I mean, I've gone through that list before with some of my clients, and they're like, oh, I can be like that, and as can we all. We're all a work in progress. So, it's all a sliding scale. Trust is a sliding scale. We go up and down. If we're really stressed out, maybe we just kind of do some things that kind of violate some people's trust because you just didn't have time or whatever. You got to give people some slack if they do something that breaks trust. They didn't show up on time for lunch. Like, okay, why? How can we fix it for next time? And same with yourself. If other people have forgiven you for a trust transgression, hopefully you can forgive others. It's just to be able to spot people who are sort of pathologically distrustful and avoid them.
Yeah.
And then if there's someone in your life that you can't sort of get out of your life, and the relationship is important to you, how can you teach them trustworthiness? Because a lot of times they just weren't taught what is it to be trustworthy.
Yeah, it's a huge topic, big topic, and again, we make trust decisions all day long. even just by, as you pointed out, by watching the news or whatever. So it's very, very important. And really, at this point in life, you don't want to get involved with someone or something that you can't trust and go down that, keep making the same mistakes. So hopefully the segment, was helpful. Give us your comments, give us your questions, see what, see what's going on with you out there. Carla, thank you. I will link to the podcast, the more expanded version of this as well. And I thank you so much for joining me again, and hope to see you soon on another episode of Second Act TV.
Bye for now.
Please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too. We'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.